Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. I'm your host, Brianna Wilson. I'm a certified dementia practitioner and the founder of Bambu Care. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about a 37-year-old woman in Australia who was diagnosed with dementia and give some insights into a particular subtype of Alzheimer's disease called Inhalational Alzheimer's disease. But before we get going, let's just do some quick housekeeping, okay? So if you signed up for our With Intent Masterclass waitlist or our Panda Mail newsletter, or even follow us on Instagram or Facebook, then you know that our With Intent Masterclass is now available for enrollment. So I am so excited about this, guys. You have no idea. If you don't know what the With Intent Masterclass is, it is a comprehensive, self-paced 9-module course that goes along with our Dementia Care book, With Intent, a practical guide to navigating behaviors along the dementia care journey. And guess what? It is not necessary to own a physical copy of our With Intent book, as you will have special access to a digital version within the masterclass. Of course, if you want to purchase a physical copy, you're more than welcome to, but it's definitely not required because you'll have access in the course, okay? Now, there are a lot of perks to the masterclass, but that's not what this podcast episode is about, right? So I'm going to leave a link for you to learn more or even enroll in the podcast notes if you're interested. But I will let you know that we are currently having an early bird special, which will bring the price down from $99 to only $87. Which you guys know that I'm not super salesy, but this is a steal, okay? All you have to do is use the code EARLYBIRD12, all caps, number 12, so EARLYBIRD12 for money off. And the early bird special ends September 9th, okay? And then the masterclass is expected to officially launch on September 26th. So super exciting stuff. The only other thing that I want to say is don't forget that Bambu Care does have a free support community for dementia care partners. So no matter where you are from or what type of dementia your partner may have, all are welcome and we'd love to support you along your care journey. So if you're interested in joining the community, please visit letsbamboo.com/champions or check out the podcast notes, okay? All right, so let's get into today's topic. Now, just to give you some background, this podcast episode was inspired by a news article that I stumbled upon recently. And I'll post a link down below to the article if you want to read it for yourself. But here's my sum up, okay? So the article is about this 37-year-old woman from Sydney, Australia. Before her dementia diagnosis, she was noted as being perfectly healthy, physically active, and working as a naturopath and nutritionist. So essentially what happened is at the end of 2016, she moved into a new apartment with her significant other. About 2 months into living there, she started to become sick, and she went on to developing allergies, put on 22 pounds out of nowhere for seemingly no reason, and began to have extreme fatigue. And as the months passed, her brain function slowly started to decline, and she began having trouble focusing and working. Some days she couldn't figure out how to get dressed, she would misplace her phone and keys, she would forget where she parked during her outings, and describes her scariest symptom as the inability to recall her name. So at some point, she was finally referred to a neurologist who eventually diagnosed her with type 3 Alzheimer's disease. So have you heard of type 3 Alzheimer's disease? Now, this is very different from Alzheimer's disease being referred to as type 3 diabetes. This is actually a specific subtype of Alzheimer's disease, and within this subtype is inhalational Alzheimer's disease, which we will get into in just a bit, okay? But the thing is, this diagnosis didn't happen right away. As we know, sometimes it can take quite a bit of time to get a dementia diagnosis, let alone a specific one, right? So in this case, why? Well, it was because all of her tests came back fine. So her white and red blood cell count was fine. Everything was okay. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. So instead of digging deeper, she was initially brushed off and told that nothing was wrong. And unfortunately, this does happen quite a bit. and quite often, and if I'm being frank, it really pisses me off. But I won't go there because this isn't what this is about, okay? Now, to make a long story short, the doctors were initially of no help, right? And it's actually thanks to a member on an online forum that happened to mention that her husband had a mold gene and that they had mold in their apartment that was impacting his health. And so this is when a series of events unraveled, which led the 37-year-old woman to discovering a leak with the assist of a hired professional. So she hired someone to come out, check her home, and what they ended up finding was black mold underneath the carpet, and realized that underneath the mattress cover that the mattress had actually turned green. So, with this new knowledge, she was able to get the appropriate testing done, which revealed that she had a genetic vulnerability to mold toxins, which basically means that exposure to mold sets off this big inflammatory response and can even lead to organ damage. So luckily the problem was able to be identified so that efforts could be made to resolve it, which one of course was getting out of that moldy apartment, right? And now about 5 years later, the woman has returned to health and her brain functioning is normal again, which is good. So in this case, the woman had a reversible dementia. Remember, when we are referring to dementia as a general term, dementia is a syndrome, right? Which is a collection of symptoms that impact memory, thinking, and behavior in ways significant enough to impact daily functioning. This is why it's so important that best attempts are made to determine the cause of dementia, because not all causes of dementia are neurodegenerative in nature. Okay? So let's talk about this inhalational Alzheimer's disease and why you probably never heard of it, but it is important to know. So there are actually 6 different subtypes of Alzheimer's disease, 3 of which are probably most recognized, and none of which are ever really talked about. In most cases, this is because they are hidden beneath the large umbrella of Alzheimer's disease. It's similar to how other dementias are overshadowed by Alzheimer's disease. Well, the subtypes of Alzheimer's disease are also overshadowed by itself. So that's pretty crazy, right? Now, I'm not exactly sure how widespread this knowledge is because Dr. Bredesen is the one who has probably brought the most attention to this particular subtype and has given more details and insights into inhalational Alzheimer's disease. But he is based in the US, and again, this story takes place in Australia. So maybe it is gaining more awareness, I don't know. But anyways, so type 3 subtype of Alzheimer's disease is the result of exposure to toxins such as mercury or mycotoxins, which are commonly associated with mold and taken into the body most commonly by methods of inhalation. So essentially, these inhaled toxins become concentrated inside the body over time. So to break it down, inhalational Alzheimer's disease falls into subtype 3 Alzheimer's disease and is believed to be a manifestation of chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And its most common symptoms include dyscalculia, which is difficulty with math, aphasia and word-finding difficulties, executive dysfunction, but could also include memory loss, difficulty with familiar tasks, depression, hypersensitivity to stress. And because of its cause, you may also see symptoms in line with chronic toxin exposure, such as a metallic taste or an increased sensitivity to smell. And the symptom onset typically follows a period of great stress. So like losing a job or experiencing the death of a family member, a divorce, things like that, okay? Sleep loss, anesthesia, or menopause or andropause, which is a decrease in testosterone for men. So it's kind of like menopause for men, right? And then, of course, exposure to some type of toxin like mycotoxins or metals. Now, as far as what may show up on imaging and lab testing, there could be indications of extrahippocampal disease with more general cerebral atrophy and then frontal temporal parietal abnormalities, so affecting those lobes of the brain. Hypoxemia, which is when there is insufficient levels of zinc in the bloodstream and or a high copper level. and dysfunction of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA to make it easier, axis. It also does tend to have a younger onset. Now, the woman we've been talking about was 37 years old, right, when her symptoms first onset, but typically the age range is noted as like late 40s to early 60s, okay? So I just wanted to share this and give you some insights because it's not really talked about and I thought it would be good to know, and also because there is a lot of emphasis on lifestyle factors as key impactors of dementia, which, yes, it's very true. But we can't forget the important role that the environment can play in developing dementia or dementia-like symptoms or just our cognition in general, okay? Unfortunately, there are so many environmental toxins all around us, even in our own home. And in fact, sometimes the air quality in our home is actually worse than the air quality outside. And so it's just important to be aware of this, okay? So hopefully you found this podcast episode interesting and informative. Don't forget to join us in the With Intent Masterclass and take advantage of our early bird special using Early Bird 12. And also join us in the Bambu Care Champion community. It's free. There's great people, great support. You can join us there at letsbamboo.com/champions. All the links are in the podcast notes. If anyone has any questions, comments, or future podcast requests, you can send us an email at podcast@whatthedementia.com. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. We look forward to catching you on the next episode. Take care, and until next time, stay strong, care on, and remember, you are not alone. Bambu Care is always here.